Hey guys, this is like week 11 for game modeling and texturing, but I'm basically going to hit upon a lot of issues, common pitfalls people have wrapping up project 2, which is like your first big game modeling project. So there's 2 student projects I just helped out fixing recently. So I'm going to focus on those because a lot of common issues arose that they're having that I know a lot of other people are having. So I'm not picking on these projects. They're just great examples. And so basically I'm going to hit upon a lot of modeling issues and then really reinforce what your model should be like, that you're really happy with it, and then you can proceed with UVing and texturing, because if you go back, you do UVing or texturing, and you go back and do modeling, it's going to mess up your UVs a bit. You're going to have to change those, change your textures, a bit of a pain. Then I'm going to go through and talk a bit about UVs, as some people are having problems with that. And again, there's some common issues and some oversights I'd like to talk about. And then texturing, I'm going to talk about Crazy Bump. It's another program. It's really good. That's the one I started using when I first started modeling to get my normal spec map. I'm going to talk about baking out the ambient occlusion from Maya, from your model. And also you can get ambient occlusion from your texture and Crazy Bump. And there's 2 different ways, and I'll talk about those, and also about what the point of the spec map, normal map, and how you're going to have to modify it. These programs that automatically generate them will get you a lot of the way there, but you're still going to have to clean them up a bit. And just some pitfalls with plugging everything back into Maya. And then I'm going to show you some other projects. This stuff really comes down to experience. So the more different projects that you can see, it helps wrap your head around this. So this is one project. This door was coming into Unity all funky. The edges were all screwed up. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yes, the door completed. Okay, so here's what it looks like in Unity. Everything's kind of all wonked out. You can see there's missing faces, and there's issues with the materials, and the whole door looks like it's like flipped inside out. So when you see stuff like that, it's almost like you're looking on the inside face of the inside, the back face of the inside face, that you're like looking through the door at the back end of it. Those are going to be normal issues. So there's some main things to check when you think you're done modeling. First off, always make sure you have your poly count up here. That's under display, heads up display, poly count. So again, this is verts, edges, faces. So vertices make up edges, which make up faces. And usually you try to aim for faces to be quads, because the reason for that is they really help the modeling tools in Maya function a lot better. But sometimes you can't help but have a few triangles, because the way that the model actually might be pointy in certain areas, and you need triangles. But never have anything more than a quad, which is a face with 4 sides, 4 edges making a face. Anything more than that's you're gonna have problems. So that's when you use the interactive split polygon tool, or as Chris has showed you, if you click on an object in object mode and is it shift and right click, you go to split. Here's the interactive split tool, but here's the split polygon tool. The interactive split tool they kind of stole from Softimage, and it's still a little buggy. So this is the original Maya split polygon tool, which functions a little better. It doesn't have as many options, but it's more solid. So it's better to use this. Anyway, that's why you notice that there's like double the amount of tries to faces. Usually, it's not always the case. But when you click on something, it's down here, result poly split 1. I did something by mistake. If I press the Q key to get out of the tool, you see my mouse change, and just Control Z to undo that. So anyway, this is total scene. This is the object you have selected, and if you're in component mode. So we can go in component mode by pressing F8, selecting some components, and you see that they show up here. Or you can press F8 or right click and go to something. So right off the bat, whenever like a student has a problem, there's some real overall stuff I'll look at. First off, I'll go to the channel box. I'll look at the layers, and I'll also look at the outliner. So this is just to get the initial overall sense of what's going on in the scene. So when you're modeling, it is helpful to put stuff in different layers. And also when you're doing a rendering project and not a game project. But when you're at the point when you're like done modeling and it's just one asset for a game, I'd get rid of all these layers because it's extra information. It does kind of stay with the FBX file, even though it's not used in the game engine. Long story short, it's just extra information you don't need. So I'll select all the layers, and I will delete selected layers. Now we had a non-deletable node. Cannot be deleted. All right. I'll click here, kind of look at the options a bit, see if there's any information more than that. Nope. All right. Last time I fixed his project, I'll try emptying the layer, delete the layer. Yeah, there's something funky with this layer. See, as I click here, nothing's showing up, but well, that's just some really funky layer. There's nothing much you can do about it. But as I click on these objects, you can tell if they have a layer associated to them. They don't. But anyway, I'll delete that. The other thing I would see is that the channel box here is red. I can look down on the timeline, is red. That means there's animation. So somehow animation got put onto here. We're not dealing with animation right now. So what I would do is I would select all the geometry, go edit, keys, delete keys, just get all the keys off there. Now the other thing is here, I see I got 3 geo. You see as I click on this one, I still have keys. And if I go to the move tool and I move it, you see it's invisible, meaning it was a bad piece of geo. He must have extruded a curve, and when something goes wrong, it'll like create the geometry, but it'll just like not exist. So this is just some garbage geo that should be deleted. I also noticed that he has all his curves still in the scene. And basically, you should be saving in iterations. So, you know, as you're still modeling, you'll still keep these curves because you don't know if you goof up, you want to create something else from these curves, whatever. But right now, I'm at the end of the modeling phase. He's happy with the door. We just need to do some fixes and make sure it's clean geometry. So, you know, you can save out a file name, you know, still in the modeling phase with curves or whatever. But I'm going to delete them because we're out of there. So I have the door and I got the frame. So the other thing to note is when you're creating geometry, maybe the pivot will be like down at the center of the world or something. So you can select everything and just center up the pivot. It's a good habit. You also notice that we have information here. And that's when you're done modeling, you'll freeze out the transform. So you get rid of all this extra transformation information. But before I do that, there's something else going on here. So I'm happy now. I got rid of a lot of other garbage down to my pieces of geometry. So first off, I can just look at this door, and he looks pretty square to me here. If you remember the dimensions, most of the time you're making a game asset, you know, you kind of have some overall dimensions to make sure it fits in the game world. But these doors are pretty specific where they have to be, I think it was like 2.5 meters wide by 2.5 meters high by 0.125 meters wide. So I actually had to modify his door to make it fit. And so this actually, a few guys, I had to do this. And so I want to show you how to check your measurements. Usually if you didn't do anything, I can go into settings. I click down here. I go to settings. I'll see that I'm in centimeters. You could move it up to meters to make it easier to handle, but we are in centimeters, so I am going to have to convert. So 2.5 meters is actually like 250 centimeters. A meter is 100 centimeters. So it's an easy conversion, so I'm not going to mess around. What I do want to do is move him up. I'll look in the front view. I just want to make sure he's sitting relatively flat on the plane. We'll make that exact in a bit, but you do want him sitting, you know, flush, so that when you bring him into Unity, you don't have to like drag him up every time. And you see we're already moving him. We're changing these values. So I didn't clear the transforms yet because we're still working on this door and that affecting the transforms. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group. We have separate pieces of geometry, and that's fine because the way that his door animates, it's easier to keep them separate. And it's fine to have separate pieces. But I am going to group them, and I'm just going to call it group right now, the blast door. Get in the habit of naming everything. Makes life a lot easier. I'm not naming these yet because I might actually break the glass out for a certain reason. But what I did want to show you is how to measure your door. So I put these in a group for a reason. I'll show you, not only for organization reasons, and at the end result, they'll be in a group, but it's a little trick to deal with these measuring tools. So here under Create Measure Tools Distance tool, I'm going to hold the V key, and I'm going to find, I want to measure the width. So I'm going to snap it to the furthest vertice. So it wouldn't be this one because the door goes out to here. So I'm actually going to hold V key, click here, click here. So the way the measure tool works is there's 2 points you have to lay down. They create 2 locators, and then there's this distance tool measuring between the 2. So I'm still in the tool. If you look down here, it says distance tool because I want to measure all 3 distances. Now, I could just pick and do the tool here to here, holding the V key to step to the vertex tool, but there's an issue with that. You know, you think that's nice and clean because these 2 points lay at the same area, but when you do that, they actually reuse this locator right here. So locator 2 is being used as part of this distance tool, and it kind of screws up. You don't want to do that, long story short, with this little technique I'm going to show you. So I'm going to undo that distance, and I'm going to pick another area to lay down the distance. So again, you're picking the widest area. I'm going with the depth now, holding V key. Oop, I picked the wrong spot. I just did the back key, backspace to key to there. So now I picked up here to do it, and you see that I have my locator 4 and 5. I did that back key. Now I have this. Yeah, I'm going to undo it. I got some weird history from locator 4. Hold the V key. Snap it. There we go. We got locator 3, locator 4, and this is measuring at the widest or the deepest point. Now let's do the height. And again, I got to find an area where I'm not already having a tool located. So I'll go in the back here. And again, I wouldn't do it here to here because that's actually not the most extreme points. The most extreme are going to be here to here. And now I have my 3 dimensions, width, height, and depth over here. I could press the enter key to get out of that tool, and you see here's my 3 distance tools. So I've got 2 locators for each tool, and this guy is actually like measuring in between those locators. So you can move them around, and you see I'm getting different values, and I'm going to make use of that in a second. So I'm going to take all these distance tools, middle mouse drag them into my group. So now everyone is in one group. So now when I scale him or scale him uniformly, you see all these numbers. The distance tool is actually moving with the door geo. So I'm getting like basically a real-time update of my size. So again, we're in centimeters. So I want to move this out to 250, and I don't have to be exact, but it's better to be just shy under. It's 10 over because it is fitting in a frame. So you see I'm pretty close, 249.2. I can then go up here and do manual updates to try and get it a little closer. See, that went over 250. This see there, 249.96. That's close enough. You know, that small amount, that we're talking about a point, you know, 0.04 centimeters. You're just not going to see that. It's fine. That's almost being exact. So let's work on the height. See as I scale them up. Oop. Let me click back on the group. I clicked out of the group. See, we're at 282. We're almost there. We're at 248.6. There we go. I just updated it to like 8.35 on scale Y, and now we're at 249.98. Close enough. Now what we got to deal with is the depth, which was 0.125, I believe. So you're at 0.125 meters, which is 12.5. I'm sorry. Yeah, 0.125 meters, which is 12.5 centimeters. So here I can just adjust this a little bit. Let's see if I can getting close. All right, 12.485. Good enough. So now I have the accurate dimensions on this door. So I can just pop it into Unity without having to scale it up within Unity or making sure everything's all right. So this is the appropriate size that the door should be. So now I can go in, I can delete all these dimension tools. And what I can do is now that I have the scale numbers on my group that are not 1, and I have these translation numbers that aren't zeroed out on my pieces of geo. So I can just kind of select everything, go modify freeze transformations. I can go in the options and just make sure that it'll freeze out everything. Don't worry about joint orient, that has to do with bones. But I'll freeze that out, and you see I click on my group. I got zeros and ones on my geo. So we're nice and clean. All right. Now, as I look at this door, a good way to, now that I freeze transformations, I centered up my pivot, I made sure the dimensions are correct, I kind of grouped everything together, I'm just starting to name stuff, getting rid of layers. Now, I can go up here to lighting and unclick this two-sided lighting. And what this will do is basically it won't light both sides of the polygon face. It'll only light the side of the face that actually has the normals pointing out. So each face only has normals pointing out of one side of the polygon face. It's for saving out render time, because usually the other face is like inside something. It's like inside the store. You don't see it. You don't need to render it. So that's across the board. We only have like one face. And then in the video game, not only does it not render, but it looks invisible, which is why when we're clicking here, you know, we're getting invisible parts, and the whole door is like inside out. So this is a good trick. Lighting, turn off two-side lighting. Another thing is you go display polygons face normals, and we could start seeing where everything's pointing out. The green line pointing out is the direction of the normal, and everything looks cool. You can look at this real quickly and say, hey, look, there's green lines pointing out this way, everything's fine. But in reality, we have one side of the door over here, one side of the door over here, and actually, if you look, you can see there's these little dots. That's the normal, which is at the center of this face, is right here, and you can tell that he's pointing inside the door. That's what this dot is indicating. So I can kind of like grab this face, move him out, and you see all of a sudden you don't see these normals coming out anymore. You see these little dots. And over here you see that now you can see these dots coming out, and if I undo it, you see it pops back in because that's, you know, his normals are pointing through the door. So we actually have normals on all those doors pointing inside out. So we have a lot of normal issues here. So I can work normals out, go normals, we have reverse. You see if I click that, now the green line is pointing this way. I can press the G key to repeat the tool. And you see that the normal's pointing correctly. Now it's pointing correctly, now it's pointing inside the door, back and forth, right? But the face, I can flip it out, have the normal paint this way, but the face is still black. So there's some issues here. If that does happen to you, it means you locked your normals usually. So just unlock them. And now you see my face turned gray. So this is unusual, but somehow the normals got locked, so it's good to know about that. Now I can go in here, and if I flip the normals, he turns black. I flip him, he turns gray. All right, so that was one issue that was very peculiar with this project. So let me work on one part at a time, which is the isolate select is really useful for this. So I'm going to go in here, look around, and you can see there's a lot of black. So again, there's a few ways. You can sometimes you can look around and see if it's black, or using the two-sided lighting here, or you can go display polygons, face normals. But when you have a lot going on, it's kind of hard to tell. You got normals, fake normals popping in from someone else, and that you might trick you into thinking that's correct. So usually I'll do this lighting technique, and I'll start clicking around. And do normals reverse, and just start finding everything's black. I can press the G key since I just used that tool to flip them back. See, here it might be hard to tell, is this face black or is it kind of just shaded, you know, due to the lighting? Is it like in shadow? And since all the other faces in here are gray, I'm going to assume that it's normals are reversed, and yep, as I flipped it, now it's gray. Everything looks pretty good in there. Go down, check all the black faces, and flip them. That looks like to be like a black face. This one in here might even be black, or it's just, yep, it's black. He looks black, yep. Here's a black face. All right, so the way that your normals will get flipped and stuff, it really comes down to how you built your geometry. It happens, you'll get used to it, and sometimes you'll start to get understanding of how face normals are kind of created when you're first creating the geo, and then you'll kind of do it less in the right orientation more. So I'm sure there might be a few more around, but, you know, I'd hunt around and find them. But this frame looks good, so I'm going to call it the frame. And also you can see I built up a history here of cleaning up these normals. Also, I might just want to check the angles. So you have soften and harden edge. Like if I click soften, you see I have quite a weird effect going on, right? And if I click normals harden, and they look pretty accurate, like they should be nice and crisp and hard like that. And you can try this set normal angle, which means the angle between two faces, if it's less than 30, soften it. If it's more than 30, harden it. So you can really see that in like a sphere. See, this sphere appears round, right? But it's really, if I click wireframe, it's just many, many faces, and the angle between them is getting so small that to your eye it looks soft. But if I click this sphere and I harden the edges, you see it's very faceted. And if I go normal set, normal angle, apply it, it's all smooth because it was all the angles between the faces were less than 30. They're very small. So usually with, you know, hard edges, with those big sharp corners, you know, you're going to want to make sure to harden the edge. And if you want to make something look curved and soft, you soften the edge, or you can try this set normal angle. Make sure you also have to do this to make sure your object looks correctly. Now, spheres and cylinders, you know, I'll get on this in the next project, but you want to low res it down as much as you can while still trying to keep the rounding out. So for a sphere, it's hard, you know, like at 12, you know, it's getting pretty good. You know, you could definitely see the difference between the angles are pretty sharp, so you can try soften it. You're gonna get some faceting with curved objects in video games. You just cannot create the amount of resolution needed to make it look soft while keeping it a well-functioning game. But that's also what normal maps come in, to play with the actual normal information on each face, and you can make it more smooth that way. Anyway, back to the door. So I also thought that the glass here, I actually removed him because not only did I have to work on the faces in here, but this is actually weird edge flow, and this can also screw up the game engine and certainly screw up your tools in Maya. So let me extract these faces. And here they are. You get, like, now you'll see the pivot points all screwed up. You get all this history and stuff, but let me modify, set up the pivot. Let me move this glass out of here for right now. And you'll see that there's actual faces in here. And that's why you can confuse it, because you have this the way that your geometry is working. Right now, it understands what's happening. You got your edges coming up, crossing over, and then coming back down the door. You know, there's at each little vertex or edge, there's only one other face connecting it. When that glass was part of this geometry, you had faces going different ways connected at the same vertex. So it can be confusing. It doesn't know how to render that. This is a smoother edge flow, particularly just because there's faces in here. And you're going from this face to this face, this one to this one, coming around down to this one. It makes sense. Like, there's only one connection of faces. With this glass in here, it can be confusing because you get to this corner here and you're like, well, do I go up the glass or do I go, continue down the door, or what's going on? So I actually made the glass another object, and not only that, because it has its own material too. He's just using like a semi-transparent blend, and you have the same thing in Unity. It's just like a diffuse with a specular. So anyway, I kind of separated him out. So I'll select everything. I'll just go delete all by type. I'm deleting history on the entire project because I had all that normal information built up on the door. You're going to want to delete your history also at the end. So this I can name is my actual door. And these two are my glasses, but I'm going to combine them. But for now, I just want to take them out of this group. You get these like groups created when you use the extract tool. So before I combine them, I just want to see which way, since this is a transparent object, you can't really use two-sided lighting. So I'll just go polygons, face normals. I want to look which way. So his normals appear, actually they're not, it's because it's transparent. You see that this normal's pointing in, this normal's pointing out. So this guy is wrong. So I'll reverse his normal. Now you see we got two normals pointing out that way. That's why I dealt with each of these separately, because it can get pretty confusing fast. So let me do the same with him. And at first he looks all right, but actually this normal's pointing the wrong direction. So do normals reverse. So now we got our normals pointing in the right direction for these. So now I'm going to click both of them, mesh combine, delete the history, because now I get all these groups. Deleted them, just call this glass. Oops. Move that in. And now our glass is pointing right direction. We got this glass one here. Now that meant something else is called glass. All right, so the material is called glass. That's the other thing. Make your materials underscore material. This is just a blend. It's not even, so I'm going to call it a door material. And he's using the same thing. Also, make sure your hypershade doesn't have like all these random materials that you've been creating. If door glass, Lambert. Okay, so like there's this Fong one that no one's using, right? So it's, you go edit, delete unused nodes, and it'll go through and delete what's not connected to anything. These guys are generic stuff. They don't get exported out. Don't worry about them. All right, so now I can call this glass without getting a 1 after it. All right, so now we have this door. I can hide everything else and deal with him. So you see there's like a lot of black and just some gray. So actually you can take the whole freaking thing and just say flip the normals, and it's actually easier to just grab the stuff that you need to flip back than selecting, you know, that whole door. So this is interesting, right? You'd look at this handle right here. Frame up here so I can look a little bit more in here. You see it, these faces need to be flipped. Not only about half these faces need to be flipped. So if I look at this door handle on this area, everything looks gray, looks great. I flip them around, I got this black face here. So what's going on? Let me take these guys and just gray them out. So everything's gray, normals are correct. So I get this black face here. Let me flip him, right? He looks great here. I look over here, he's black. So I click on this face here and I move him around, and I realize this part of the door is also representing the back of your handle, which we can't do because in the game engine, this will be invisible. So, oh, I don't like that. Let me flip him so I can actually see him, but now we have an invisible patch over here. So let me flip him back so that I'm going to use him at this part of the door. I think I moved him in a little bit too much. Now I got to divot. No. We also see this divot, or the difference in, I'll say difference in normals. So hold the V key and I'm just going to snap them. So hopefully I got rid of that divot. All right, sometimes you'll see this little like flickering too. Like that's what's happening, is it's so close. This stuff's so close that it almost looks like you're seeing through it. So I actually had to rework this whole door area. So I kind of took this handle, I extracted him out, opened him. I just wanted to kind of, let me center up the pivot, basically just to get him out of the way so I can start seeing what I'm doing in here. Actually, I took this face and I extracted him. I left him where he is because he's like in a perfect position for this door, but what that allowed me to do is I could select this edge, and I tried to double click to select the whole edge loop, and it's not selecting the whole edge loop, which to me means that there's some edge flow issue. But I did move him up, and then you see he's kind of like cutting into this this hole. So let me see if I can select this edge, select this edge. I can move him up forward a little bit, go back. Unfortunately, it won't let me select the whole edge loop. I have to go around and select it by hand, and I can move him forward enough where now we have a little separation between the two sides of the doors. So I could try and do something like a mesh fill hole. See, that doesn't work. Let me undo that. I can do a mesh pen to poly, and I could start clicking on these border edges, and nothing's happening. So let me press the Q key. So there's something wrong with this geo here, but as you see, as I move that, I actually move this whole part of the door. So this is actually part of the door also. Okay. That's why I didn't like it. We need to basically separate them. All right, what I think I'm going to try and do is actually use the split polygon tool to run an edge around here, allowing me to delete let me just show you real quick. Let me see, I kind of have an idea of how to fix this. Let me try split polygon tool. It's going to be here, 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 and then to there. See if, okay, it lets me do that. Press the Y key. I'm going to repeat the tool, and I'm going to run them up the same way. Okay, let me do that. Great. So now I'm going to select these faces here, which are basically connecting the two sides of the door. I'm going to delete them. And now that should have allowed a separation between the two doors. All right. So I did end up deleting a little connection here. But let me try using the append to poly tool. If all I want to do is select this edge, that edge, and right here. He doesn't want to complete it for me. I have one triangle. Let me try this guy to this guy. All right. Oh, we're getting somewhere. Try that again. U to U. Y key. U to U. All right. So now we have some walls separating a door. I'm going to move him back in. I could press the insert key, snap his pivot to his corner. Let me just move him out, make sure it's definitely his corner, not any other vertex on that. So, all right, and then I can hold the V key and to snap him there, and I just snapped him right into place. So now he's back into place. And now this is the back face of the door. So let me just snap him to this. He's getting a little confused. Let me try and get a different angle on this. All right. There, he's snapped into place. So now I can select this face and this door, mesh combine, and he looks like he disappeared, but I'm in isolate select mode. So you could say add the selected object, or you could just turn off your isolate select mode. And then take this handle and the door, go mesh combine, same thing, add selected. Now I have my door with a separation between the door handle and the back here. But I have overlapping vertices basically, because these parts had different vertices, and so I got to do some welding here or some merging. But they're sitting right on top of each other really well. So I should be able to do a merge, and it should combine everything. Also, I do this when you're done modeling and you're not sure. This I see a lot. There's like overlapping vertices sitting around, even though you don't see them, and it kind of screws up your model in Unity. So even if you didn't do anything like that, it's always a good practice to, at the end, you clear out your transforms, you center your pivot, and now we're going to merge just to get rid of any overlapping vertices. So if you look here, we have 190 vertices, and I'll click merge, and you see it went down to 172. So I got rid of a lot of vertices. I'm going to get rid of isolate select. I'm basically going to go delete all history because I've built up quite a bit with modeling. You saw I got rid of all those groups and everything. So I'm going to call this door, move him back in with the middle mouse key. So now we have clean geo. I mean, you could select the door and just do a set normal angle, but that actually made everything soft. So in this door, it's very mechanical looking. I'll just do, harden edge. He wants everything hardened. And there you go. And so now we have a clean door. Since I just did that soften harden, I'll delete history. But he's the appropriate size. He's sitting like right on the grid. He's the correct size. Everything's clean, no history. The materials are named correctly. So everything's great. But I did remodel the door handle a little bit, so it would like screw up your UVs a little bit. You just had to see what happened, recreate maybe the UVs just for that door handle area. But that was a lot of modeling. Now this is clean and go right into Unity. No problems. Again, that's File, Export All, and no problem. So one other project I want to look at modeling wise, and then I'm going to stop this video and I'm going to create another one for straight up UVing and texturing and all the processes out of this, because I want you to really get in the process of like knocking out one phase first. Really make sure your model is clean, test it, bring it into Unity without textures, doesn't matter, just making sure everything is accurate and clean, and then do your UVing and texturing. So this is a desk, tries, about 4,000 tries, and I ended up getting this thing down to like 600 tries or something. So right off the bat, we have a lot of, this is like going to be about how to optimize your model, basically. So I could see the UVs. For this guy, actually, I forgot to tell him that now he needs an outside and an inside for this antenna, because it's just one face at the moment. It's pointing out, so you see your faces on the inside are going to be invisible. So basically what he'd need to do, I didn't even tell him this, but if he's listening, you can double click. And what's interesting is, since this is all one big piece of geometry, it does understand kind of where the piece of geometry ends, and so you can like go into face mode, double click, and I can select certain parts, and it's almost like they're separate components, and I can still work with them. So anyway, for this project, you're probably going to want to, when you're done cleaning up the model, you basically got to duplicate this, maybe scale it in a little bit, and you got to reverse the normals and scale them back so that they're just kind of touching. So now you have an inside and outside, but I'll get to that in a moment. All right, so first off, he has this light in the scene. I'm going to get rid of that for right now. I just want to focus on the model. Layers look good. Great. So it is one piece of geo at the moment. I think first off, I went to this handle here, and since he doesn't have any history left, I just went around manually, and I reduced. I couldn't go into the construction history and reduce it that way. I just framed up on this thing and started going around and double clicking every other edge loop, because he doesn't need this much res. Remember, delete edge vertex, or else you're going to get vertices left over. It's going to screw you up. So this looks like there's just enough edges. It's getting a little faceted, but we'll use soften edges. It should be fine. I can go into X-ray mode and start working on stuff. Or you can also start ripping stuff back apart. Even though this is one big geo, double click face mode, only selected this cylinder, nothing else. I could go mesh extract up in here. I can click the other one, isolate, select, get rid of him so I can see in here. Now the interesting thing is he left the end caps of the cylinders on, and they're actually hidden. They're inside this handle. So first off, I'm going to low res this cylinder by going to every other edge loop. And go edit mesh, delete edge vertex. Then go into face mode, and I can just select these faces that are hidden essentially, so I don't really need them. And actually, if you look down, Oh, they're underneath. But there's the faces on the other side of him too that I'm going to get to in a moment. But for right now, I'm going to double-click F frame up on this guy. Just go around and select every other one. All right. Edit mesh, delete edge vertex, go into face mode. Select these faces, delete them. And if you look in ice X-ray mode, you'll see that there are faces underneath here. So I can go inside. Right now, if I turn off X-ray mode, you see I'm like inside the machine or the desk or whatever name of his asset is. I'm controlling and clicking because I saw I selected other faces by mistake. You can also check your poly count, see if you have extra faces that you select that you shouldn't have. Control, click off. All right. So I can select these guys and normals soften their edge. So if I get out of wireframe mode and select off, you see they look, from this distance they look fine. Again, if I go normals, harden edge, you see that they're faceted. I'm trying to reduce the geo on cylinders and spheres to still maintain, curve with as less amount of geo as possible. So he has this kind of cube sitting on, and like I might be nitpicking, but maybe there might be a face underneath here that we can delete. Yeah, there is. Even though that's just one face, it's one thing less, and also it won't have to get complicated with UVing when you're like, well, wait, where's this one face and everything, because then now you have to unwrap everything too. It's just less to do. With this cylinder, you can select the whole thing and go normal soften, but if you click off it, you'll notice that the ends get weird because the ends actually should be hardened. So you actually want a softening on these edges and a hardening on the other edges to get something looking right. All right, but from this distance, this will look good. Let me just select these faces again. All right, got the edges selected, normals harden. Okay, that looks good. They're hard on the end and soft in the middle. Now the other thing, I think I reworked the TV quite a bit. Yeah, I did. So I went around and just looked at the edge loops. Like this one right here, it's not doing anything. It's not creating a difference in the geometry. It's just kind of sitting there. So let me tear this off over here because I'm going to do this a lot. Delete that edge. I looked like this edge and this edge. It's not defining anything different because the slope of this console is the same all between them. So watch, I can delete it. Slope's exactly the same. It went around the TV, but it wasn't doing anything. Now I looked at this edge, right, and it's defining a different slope in the console. But he's a little annoying because I'm gonna have to figure out where to connect him here to make a quad. Because right now we have a 1, 2, 3. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it is a quad. Because I thought maybe this was like a 5-side and I would have to run this down somewhere. But anyway, I mean, it does add a nice little kind of bevel here at the bottom. So you can keep it or not. I actually deleted it because from a distance I thought you could achieve that effect with a texture normal map. But you could keep that. This one runs around. You can see it's not really holding any geo. So this one, it comes down and you see it runs. It does define this. I left it, but you could delete it and then just run. Here, I'll just show you real quick. Like, I'll delete it. And you'll have like a 5-sided here that you'll just run an edge to. Because around the TV it's fine, but now we have a point here in the middle. And right here, now we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a 5-side here too. But I mean, you could just say select the object, shift. We'll do a split polygon here to here, and here too. Here to here, and he's all good. But I could get rid of him too. Let me go back though, because that's not how I fixed his. Let me leave that for now, but you could. These two edges right here, they're not doing anything. They're not changing the faces between them. So pretty much I left this whole thing alone. I mean, you see here, it is interesting because you can click vertex. We have some of, and this is just ending right here. He's not going around, so we have an issue there. It's creating five-sided. And actually, if you look here, I noticed that you had vertices. He must have had an edge here, and he deleted it or whatever without using the delete edge vertex. So basically, I just grabbed and clicked delete. And you'll get a warning because basically if you select regular points that are actually holding geo, you hit delete, you can't do it. Some areas you can, like I hit delete here, nothing, but so this is just like a quick way. I know there's extra vertices. I'm just kind of clicking on them, deleting them. Because we just had, that's going to screw you up. So I got this edge down here, which isn't doing anything. So I'll delete edge vertex. So that pretty much leaves the console, you know, looking good. Got rid of like 600 or whatever. So I'm going to rework this TV because there's edges running around this whole thing. You don't actually really need that. I think what I ended up doing was I wanted to get rid of some of these edges that were running along here. But you got to keep these edges on these because it's defining this transition point. But I deleted the edge going around the whole thing. Same with here. These three in the front face, they're actually defining a change in like angle between these front faces. So you got to keep them, keep that resolution, but you don't need them running around the whole TV. Same with here and here. But again, I just keep these edges in the front for right now until I figure out kind of what I'm doing with them. Delete edge vertex. So you see things getting much cleaner. So it's just how do we deal with these corner parts now, because we have edges that are kind of going off to nowhere. And I think what I ended up doing was using the split tool. I went from here to here. This guy, must have done something. This one here seems to be defining, this is like, this face is much different than this, so you kind of have to keep this edge to define that. So I kind of ran them down into there. And I'm pressing the Y key to repeat. All right, so I went around. So now that I can actually take these and delete. So now I'm good. I'm back to quads up here. And actually, if you count it, this is one big quad in the center with the two little triangles on the end. And down here, I ran this, so now we have a quad in the middle with two little triangles on the end points. And you see that these faces up here actually are not quads anymore. So what I did is I ran this to here. So actually I did get rid of this edge, that's defining this whole thing, wrapping around. Actually I did get rid of this. Because if you look here now, this face is actually a quad. Even though it looks like a triangle, there's actually a point right here. So he's actually a quad. And again, I got rid of these edges wrapping around this whole thing. I just Control deselected these front ones. delete edge vertex. So now we're left with this kind of same situation. What I'm going to do is, object, split. I'm going to take this point, run it to there. Now we have a quad here. And I'm going to take this point, and run him to the back corner of the TV. Hopefully that worked. Yeah. So now we're, I forgot this top part up here. See, now this is a quad up here. This is one large quad, and this is a quad. Even though they look more triangular, remember there's still a vertex here. So this is actually two edges, not one. So now we really reworked the TV, but I got rid of this edge over here. So you already saw how I dealt with this. I kind of just popped one down, popped one down. And if this is indeed a point here, then maybe we could just do that to just ensure that, we have quads and tris. So I really cleaned up this TV area. We've kind of reduced down to the real base what we need. You see that we're still really high. But again, if you go into face mode, double click, it'll kind of select a major component of your mesh. And if I move it, you can see that he kind of duplicated this half sphere a few times by mistake. So I'm going to delete, double click to select all, delete, double click, select all, delete. Keep doing it. Okay, it seems to be like 6 or so. I'm going to undo that last one. Now we're down to 1. You see, deleting all those, now we're down to 1,000 tries. That was like 2,000 extra tries. But also, I think it's too much res. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to select edge loops, delete. I'm selecting every other one because I think that that's an appropriate resolution. And you just kind of have to play with how many edges are really holding it. So, I mean, this might look faceted to you, but remember we can always go in, select those faces and normals, soften the edge, and hopefully that'll soften it a bit more. Remember, we'll be up here too, So then we got this cylinder. And if I go into isolate select mode, you can see he's got the end caps here. So same process, I would select every other one. Oh, this guy must have been selected by mistake. Control select him. Make sure everything's looking pretty good. Keep going around. All right, delete those edges. I would go in and delete the end caps too, but just for the sake of time. Now, since this guy's cut a little bit, you can't really go in and delete a lot, but you can. I can try and go around and delete some edges. Since this guy's been chopped up, you try and delete some. Make sure you're not removing too much of it, so that he still kind of looks, all beat up and what have you. But you can just go around and get rid of a lot of the geo. So this is good. Again, I would, you got to duplicate this guy, scale him up a little bit, reverse his normals so that we actually have an inside part to him. And done. And we're under 1,000 tries. Somehow I got under like 600 tries last time, but this is actually much better. I'd go through, edit, delete all history. That got rid of a lot of groups, name him, all these different parts, just select everything, freeze transformation, center up the pivot, and he's clean geo to go. So I just went over a whole hour of a lot of common modeling issues. I'm going to stop this video, and then I'm going to create another one for UVing, texturing, using Crazy Bump, Photoshop, blah, 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 and common issues to be aware of in UVing, texturing, and getting your normals and spec maps created.